Shooting.
It's Charlie Flowe, World Sports Show here at Pro League Authentics here with Bob Rigby, legendary goalie. Got quite a crowd out here for you. Legendary, yeah.
It's, I thought people would be coming out of the emergency room to see a guy this old, but it's, Philadelphia has a great tradition. It's always interesting to see guys that came back and that have history. There was a fellow from the Polish Eagles and the old ethnic teams. And, as much as people look at I'm becoming this, I guess the face of the old timers or the pioneers.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, we were the guys I looked at. The Walt Bar, all the Lighthouse crew, Temple University had teams. I can remember coming in from East Strouds when we played against Temple, St. Joe's, University of Pennsylvania, and that was, that was a big thing for me. So I think it's really important that people realize that as much as the guys of my era did kind of get more publicity and got a chance to play professionally, my heroes, people wouldn't even know their names. Walt Tarnowski was a goalkeeper for the Philadelphia Ukrainians. He was, and these guys, Alberto Tripp. I played with guys that were every bit as good as any of the pros that I played with and that are playing in this league. And these guys were working full time, coming up the train 2 or 3 nights a week. So, it still never ceased to amaze me. We were so just in awe of having the opportunity to play for our livings, and we never lost that. It's a different world today in terms of the kids come up and they're traveling all over God's creation, and and it's I think sometimes it would be nice to mesh some of the old with the new in terms of just the other thing about the city leagues and the guys I played with. I'll tell you what, tough as nails. Just tough as nails in terms of you just didn't even look at it out of the wrong way. So, and it was a great place to build the roots, because and I went to North Catholic and spoke at their Soccer Hall of Fame last year, and they have some of the greatest guys that have come out of the city. And I said, to be able to come, I was a suburb, to be able to come in and make it in the city is still, of all the things that I accomplished, is probably the most important thing. To be able to come in and those guys thought you could play. So, it's all relative as far as that stuff goes.
I think there's a lot of similarities too with the leagues you played in the 70s and into the 80s, and even now the MLS. And these guys like you aren't making millions and millions of dollars. They're playing for the love of the game. They're critting out 2 a days. That's a lot of similarities with you. So a lot of these guys are very humble, easy to talk to, and they just play for the love of the game like yourself.
But the union and the young players that they really prioritize character, and they've been very selective in terms of just the makeup of the kids they brought in. So I am so impressed with the way they carry themselves on the field, off the field. They're the real deal. Some of these kids have such a bright future. Some of these kids are on the cusp of, the national team is really looking strong, and so it makes a big difference when you see in other sports, you have kids with great athletic talent, but they can't keep their lives together, or they don't have any navigational system. So it's smart as an organization to get people that because you're developing, you're making an investment, and they're a great crop of kids. They just
We want to turn back the clock a little back and go back to 1974. Actually, you had your first year. 73 here in Philadelphia. I don't want to go back too far, but played a game at the Spectrum against the Red Army team. It was an indoor game, one of the first of its kind.
Yep.
A lot of us don't know the background on that. I got a nice poster up here of that too.
February 11th. Right. The Russian Red Army team at that time was the equivalent of the Russian national team, and Russia at that era was probably one of the 2 or 3 top teams in the world. Unbelievably technically gifted.
Yeah.
They were, the Russian guys, you couldn't even get, they never changed the expression. You couldn't get, it was almost robotic in terms of how workmanlike they were about how they played.
It was all business.
Well, but it was business for them.
For them, that was their life.
If you sustained that, your whole style of living was based on how you performed. So it was pretty serious stuff. We had, that was right after the first year that we had won the championship. Jim Fryatt, Andy Proven, Roy Evans, the European players had gone back, and we were left just kind of, waiting for the outdoor season to begin. So they decided to just see what this would be like, and for us to start off the first indoor game we've ever played, they bring in the Russian Red Army team, and I think that that was the first game that I think people in Philly really got to see me exposed as much as we did. I think they had 60 shots or something.
We still made about 30-some mistakes too. So.
Yeah, it was. I remember being sore for about 3 weeks, but it was. But as we did always with that group of guys, and the other thing that's unique about the Philadelphia Atoms, if you look at the similarities or the differences with the Philadelphia Union, all of our Americans were from Trenton. If you put a dot in the middle of Philadelphia and went 45 miles, they were all Philadelphia kids. And we had kids from Textile, Rider, University of Pennsylvania. It was a really talented group. At that time, on the national team for the U.S., there were about 5 or 6 guys, always from, again, that same perimeter. So, so on a given day, we could go out and run with the big dogs. I wouldn't want to get on a big field with Rush either. We're probably better playing indoors as far as that goes.
Talk about that. I mean, that's a unique situation. You don't see that in pro teams these days, where the team is made up of Philadelphia. The Philadelphia team is made up of guys from everywhere. I mean, that probably helps in fan-wise and marketing-wise. And you guys are all homegrown, hometown guys, and people in the stands are cheering for their friends.
The marketing and the selling of professional sport is, that would be the equivalent of like Tyrannosaurus Rex we're still walking around in terms of our time. It's so different. But with that said, the core of the soccer community that came to support us were the people that, lived and died soccer. And it was the ethnic teams in that base. There were no youth system. There was no club teams like FC Delco and these academy teams. It was, so a lot of the, were the people that followed the Philadelphia leagues and then the colleges and that kind of thing. So to have, and it was unique in the sense that Bobby Ludwig was a kid from Textile. He was a 2 or 3-time All-American. Charlie DeCilli, Louis Meal were from Temple. They were 2 or 3-time All-Americans. I had been an All-American. Bob Smith. I mean, there was a small group, but these were all first-team All-Americans in the scope of the country. So we were just, this area at that time was producing, whether it was the confluence of the planets or just cutting your teeth in the leagues. Just at that point in time, there were a lot of national level players coming out of Philadelphia.
Now you guys won the championship in your first year in 1973. Talk about how that was seen, because not many expansion teams do that now. It's a unique thing. That's the first time American sports, expansion wins a championship.
Everything was a first. So we didn't know. We were just getting in planes and what city were we in, and as long as the other team had a different color shirt, we knew the job at hand. That's as much presence as we had. But the uniqueness of that team was Al Miller, who was the first American coach, and he was an East Stroudsburg guy. I knew Al all through college. I had just been to England the summer before my senior year in college. We went on a tour together. And I thought I was going to Dallas. I was going to be the first draft pick in the Dallas Tornado. So I got a call about maybe 3 days before the draft saying, if we get the first draft, we're going to pick you. Will you come? And to play in Philly, to play for Alabama, it was like, you got to be kidding. I was thrilled to go anywhere to play. But he hand chose that core group of American kids And then the English players he brought in, Derek Trevis, Jim Fryer, Andy Provan, George O'Neill. I better say Scottish, or he'll never let me live it down. He's not English. Andy Provan was Scottish. And those guys they had all played in the lower. They started out in the upper divisions, but played second or third division in England for 10 or 15 years, which is not for the faint of heart. And all those guys had coaching badges. So when they got here, they realized we're only going to be as good as how quickly these kids we bring them on. Every one of them was a coach in their own right, and we'd stay out after training 2 or 3 hours with those guys working on things. That's the kind of work ethic we had, and that's they were just phenomenal guys that led by example and took their time to help us develop. So I never ran into a group like that ever in the 13 years I played after that year. And if anything, I always that was great, but it spoiled things for me in the sense that I always thought people were going to be, that we were so tight as a team. I mean, we had more fights every day in training. I'm serious. That's how intense the competition was. When we'd get to a game, everybody was glad just not to be kicking each other. I'm serious. And yet, in 3 years, I'm walking into the New York Cosmos and Pelé and Beckenbauer and Cruyff, George Best. I played with all these guys, but it was never as tightly bound a group as that. And that is, when it comes to character and putting people together, that really being aware of what you're looking for, and not just the talent. It's an essential ingredient.
I guess that made an adaptable team when you've got lots of players that are players/coaches, for their background. That you guys can adjust your game on the fly almost too. That gives you a big advantage.
The captain of our team, who was the sweeper in front of me, ended up coaching about 4 teams in the NASL. Jim Fryer coached about 4 teams. Our left back coached Liverpool. Roy Evans played for us, went back, coached Liverpool for 4 or 5 years.
Household names, clubs.
Well, and these guys, as players, they saw the game a different way. They were teachers by nature. So we did. I've never played on a team where so many guys, there were coaches on the field, as you said, and I remember the first time I played with Johan Cruyff. Cruyff would pull back to the sweeper. He'd look for about 10 minutes, and then he'd start pushing guys around. Pelé was the same way. They could read and scope a game in 5 or 10 minutes, and they pulled the strings. There's very few people that see the game that way.
And it helps your job a lot as a goalkeeper, because you're seeing the whole scope, and you got guys in front of you seeing the whole scope. That just makes a lot.
No, absolutely. And, it's interesting how many goalkeepers, I think we talked about this in the show, end up doing color commentary. Because they see. I always see the game differently than a forward would see the game, or a midfield. And there's things that it would be neat to bounce off them in terms of how they, the uniqueness of the positions. But when you're back there, it's all played out in front of you, and you process it differently. Just do.
Just got a question from the crowd.
The crowd.
The crowd.
One man standing, man.
Thank you very much for the 1973 North American Soccer League Championship.
There you go.
Adams. And look at this incredible sports cover. Sports Illustrated is my favorite magazine. Soccer Goes American, Phillies Bob Rigby, 9373. As a matter of fact, you were the first soccer player to ever appear on a Sports Illustrated cover. How do you feel about that? That distinction?
In some respects, it's still like, is this real? But in other respects, one of the things as my career went through is like a lot of the accoutrements of playing, I don't have it up anywhere. I don't have, it's kind of, this stuff is stashed in a box somewhere. I didn't understand what it meant to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but I started to, because for 40 years, about 15 or 20 times a year, I get these sent to me from all over the world to sign, because Not that they know about Rigby and soccer, but that it's such a collector's item. So that started to sink in. But for me, great memories, the relationships, they're the things that are of value. When I finished playing, I walked away from it completely. I don't compete in anything. I mean, I won't play racquetball because I still tend to not be the healthiest competitor. and I don't like that.
About tennis.
No, I'm serious. So, I mean, it's really fascinating to be this age and look back at that time when, I was, lived and died it. But the beautiful thing in life is aging, and you go through phases and you change. So,
and the magazine also represents the year Philadelphia Adams won the championship.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, and to be, I'll tell you, sometimes in life you end up being on the cover, if you will. But if this guy and the other guys that I played with, and even the people that end up giving you a chance to even be in that position, you get a sense of appreciation, and so there's a lot of gratitude, a lot of humility, and
who was that team?
That was the Dallas Tornado, Texas Stadium. Lamar Hunt owned the team. Lamar Hunt was really instrumental in supporting soccer, and still is the owner of. Well, his family. Lamar has passed, but there's still 2 teams in the MLS that are in the Hunt family. So there's a lot, it's amazing. It's like, will the circle be unbroken in some respects? As far
Cup name is going to carry on forever too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's.
Thank you for answering the question.
I'm glad it's there because it's still like, did that really happen? That's a long time.
You told me the story a little bit about how this all went down, how you found out, and
I mean, Kyle's still a friend of mine because. From those days, and then I was in Superstars with him, and Kyle did a 3-hour photo shoot the day before.
Yeah.
The league, he was the rookie of the year. Kyle couldn't juggle a ball 3 times. He was an he was a quarterback.
Kind of skills.
No, but he was a great center forward. Scored about 14 goals, big in the air, battled, and the league and Dallas and everybody. He was going to be the stamp to help get more notoriety for soccer.
Okay.
But the fact that we went down and just tore him apart, basically, I guess that ended up, he is on the cover. I always laugh at him. I said, "You're going to be in my armpit for the rest of your life."
I guess he's going up for a header net, and you actually got the best of him there.
Yeah, that was. It was a ball came up. Chris Dunleavy marked him. He didn't get a touch.
Okay.
He did not get a touch the whole game. That was a ball that just came in and cleaned it up, and and the rest is history.
How did you actually personally find out? Did you get a phone call, or you just happened to walk by a newsstand?
I was up in the Pocono Sports Camp. 1 week later, Friday night, late at night, we'd been out with high school kids all day, sitting, swatting mosquitoes away, and about 6 of the guys I played with, the British guys had already gone home. Our coach, Al Miller, was running the camp. And it was just at dusk. I won't ever forget that. And he walked over. I was sitting with Bob Smith, who's still my best friend in the world, and he handed the magazine to me. And honest to God, it didn't even register. I mean, it just so that and it still has that effect. I've seen it forever, and it's still like, well, yeah, that's me. And
still recognize yourself with the hair,
I'd like to have a little of the hair back, actually, but I'm going short these days. But and again, it's kind of the symbol of just what a phenomenal year and a dream come true, and what I never was around a bunch of men like that in my life. Never was, never have been since. So I feel, I feel blessed in that sense. Good bunch of guys.
Bob, at that time at the stadium, there was like 19,000 people. Was there much fanfare after you guys won the championship?
We won the game in Philly. There were about 6,000 people at the airport when we came back. I mean, and there was nothing on television, no announcements. I mean, there was such a groundswell of support for this team. We had our fans were unbelievable. And that team still has, in small groups, people that followed that team. Well, you know, there's some connection with that experience that has kind of stood the test of time, not just with the guys, but the fans. It was...
I think you set some attendance right. Against the records, from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, the success of the team in Philadelphia that year, there were 9 teams in the league. In 4 years, there were 28 franchises. And they went nuts because they were all basing it on what they called the Philadelphia model. The Philadelphia model ended up, we didn't get paid enough, and I went to New York to make a living. But, you know, but the model was you can really, they worked, they had a front office. I mean, Carl could tell you, he was, you know, they only had about 5 people, but they, you know, they really reached out and they got a response. I think the first game, there were 25,000 people, and that sustained through that first year. And people in Philly wouldn't have given you a shot in hell to get 25,000 people to the vet, you know. But the other thing that's like kind of unique is that 25,000 people in the vet or at St. Louis, or we played in all the big stadiums. And even with 25 or 30,000 people, it still looks like there's, you know, half the joint's empty. So that's why getting soccer-specific stadiums, this league has really learned its lessons well. From a business standpoint, from a facility standpoint, and you know, there are things that have made, you know, have allowed them to kind of endure the challenges economically and otherwise.
Interesting. I just wanted to thank Bobby for being here. This is the end of the session. I appreciate everyone turning out for today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.